friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And today I'm making Calendula, Grapefruit, and Bentonite Clay soap. So I need to get right to it because my oil is already ready to go, and I will explain what I'm doing as I go. Alright, so here I have my digital scale, and after I've got my measuring cup on there, I then turn it on so it can calibrate to what I'm using. What I need to start with, and this makes 6 bars, a little better than 6 bars, 6 4-ounce bars, is 8.5 ounces of my filtered rainwater. Now when it comes to soap making, you want to be pretty precise when it comes to your water, your lye, and your fat. Okay, I got a little bit too much water. It's hard for me to talk and measure at the same time. When it comes to your other ingredients, you don't have to be quite so precise, and I don't typically measure them out. But for these first 3, you need to stay as close as you can, right at 8.5 ounces. So I'm going to put that into my batter bowl over here. All right, and now, since my fat is at the right temperature right now, I need to move quickly. Right here I have 20 ounces of melted coconut oil, and it is right at 120 degrees. All right, and I'll link to these below. These are extra smalls, but through that link you should be able to find other sizes. Okay, and now I'm going to use my lye. I will link to the lye I use below. Okay, there we go. 3 ounces of my lye, and now I'm going to pour that into my water. You don't want to do it the other way around. Lye goes into the water, not the water into the lye. It could have an explosive effect here. Now, as this is in here, this is going to be producing fumes, so you want a well-ventilated area. Make sure you have a window or a door open and or a fan going. You also want to make sure you have some safety glasses. And then I'm going to take the stainless steel spoon and kind of mix this up on the bottom, because it does tend to want to harden at the bottom. Usually only once you get it scraped off the bottom one time, the rest of it, it'll dissolve fine. And you notice I have a glass thermometer in here, and once the lye mixes in with the water, that starts, you'll see the temperature on that really start to climb. Typically it'll go up to about 150 degrees. And then what you want to do is let it cool down to about 120, 125. Now, I like to have my fat melted and at the right temperature before I mix this, or just a few degrees above, because the fat will take a lot longer to cool down to 120, 125 than this will. Now this is just hit 150, and in a few minutes this will cool down to the temperature I need it. Okay, so while I'm waiting for that to cool down, I'm going to go ahead and go over a few other things you're going to want to have handy. You're going to want to have whatever soap molds you want to use. I prefer this one. This is the one I use for this particular size batch. Now, if you want to make double batch, then you can use a soap mold like this, and then you're going to want to have something to slice it with. Now, I don't have a soap cutter yet. I only use this for when I'm doing like a big bar of lard soap, and then I let it totally cure in this size and then just shave off what I need at a time for making my hand soap or my laundry soap. And you can find a video on how to make the laundry soap right up here. You also want to make sure that you have some vinegar on hand. This is colored because it's got my floral vinegar in it. And if you get any lye on your skin, just spray this on and this will neutralize it, because lye is alkaline, vinegar is acid, so it will neutralize the lye. And I have used the vinegar before when I've got lye on my skin. I think it was on my arm because I was not wearing long sleeves like I am right now. And I sprayed the vinegar on there and it quickly neutralized the burn. Alright, some other things you're going to want to have ready to go, this is about where I want it, is whatever herbs or other, your oils, any kind of ingredients you want to add, have them ready to go. So I'm going to be putting in some calendula flowers, and I just put in the whole flower. And these ones are from last year. And I'm going to be putting in about a capful of the grapefruit oil. So I'm going to have that ready to go. And a capful of some vanilla just to add a nice scent. And this is not Now Foods brand vanilla. I don't buy this brand very often, but when it comes to their vanilla oil, I really like it. And I'll link to both of these below. And then I'm going to be using, this is probably about a 1/4 cup right here of flowers. And then I'm going to be using about another 1/4 cup of the Bentonite Clay. Now, Bentonite Clay is excellent for the skin. It's actually excellent for your whole body. I use this to make my clay mask, and you can find a video on that right up here. And it's very detoxifying. So if you were to take it internally, let's say you mix a teaspoon to a tablespoon in with some yogurt or some kind of fruit juice or whatever, it doesn't have much of a flavor. It's very, very mild. It does absorb though, so it's like a sponge. So you want to start with just a little bit, and then you drink that or take that, and it will just, what it does is it just pulls the toxins out of the system, and that binds them together and then flushes them out. And the same applies to the skin. It pulls the toxins out of the skin. It's just really great stuff, and it's not that expensive to buy. So I will link to that below if I can find the stuff that I have. Last time I looked for that particular brand, I couldn't find it, but there's a couple of different ones out there. Okay, so this is ready. I'm going to go ahead and take this out. Make sure you don't touch this liquid at all. It's going to burn anything that's organic. Okay, and so now I'm going to pour in my fat. So that was at 125 degrees. The fat's at about 120. It takes forever for the fat to cool down. And now you can just stir this. Just keep stirring it with a spoon, and it will eventually start to saponify. But the quicker process is to use a stick blender. So I like to start on low and then speed it up from there. Forgot is that when I'm mixing like this, I forgot to say, and I forgot to do, is I like to turn my hoodie around backwards and then hold this over my face. More in particular when I'm adding any kind of herbs, because that's when it's most likely to splash, and at this point you don't want this touching your skin. All right, this is about the thickness I like it for when I'm ready to add in my herbs and my oil, my essential oils. Is a very light trace. I don't like it to get much thicker than that, because once I add those things in, the process goes very fast. So I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle in the Bentonite Clay, my Calendula flowers, and my oils. Oh, they smell so good together. Such a wonderful scent. Okay, and now this is where you really want to be careful if you got to be close to this to cover your face. Here we go. Now you can see it's already thickened up quite a bit since adding that in, so I'm really going to want to work fast. I'm going to mix it just a little bit more, and then I'm going to put it in my molds. Okay, so using a small rubber spatula to help pour it into your molds if you choose to do it this way rather than putting it in a big mold, the big brick. Make sure that you really push that down in the corners, otherwise you'll end up with air bubbles. And you see how thick that is now, and that took a very short period of time for it to get that thick. It takes a lot longer to get to that first stage where it's just a light trace. And what you'll find too is as you start working with different kinds of fats, shea butter for instance, if you add shea butter to your soap, that will actually speed that process up even more. I've used shea butter and other oils from time to time, but I just like the ease of just using coconut oil. It makes a good, or just a really good soap, and shea butter can get quite expensive. I like to save my shea butter for the skin cream that I make. Just is a really good addition to the skin cream. Okay, so then once I have it all in there like that, I like to go through and then just kind of pile it high. Because then by this point it's starting to harden up enough that I can sort of play with it a little bit and mound it up. Instead of making just flat bars. Now if I was doing just a regular lard soap that I use for cleaning, which sometimes I do that in this too, then I just scrape it flat. I don't try to have anything fancy because that's just for use around here. But when I'm making it to sell or to give as gifts, then I like it. I just kind of like the more rustic look it gives it than having that clean slice. You know, having little swirls, and you can take a chopstick and kind of swirl through it like that, make it look like frosting. And right now the color of this might not look super pretty, but as it cools and solidifies, it's going to take on a much lighter look to it. Now, sometimes you'll end up with what's called like a soap ash, and there's ways around that. Like you can, you know, mist your soap down after it's cured and then let it dry again to get rid of the ash. Personally, I kind of like the way it looks. I like the more rustic look it gives the soap doing that too. Or even a frosted look, just leaving it. So if you see a white appearance when your soap is curing on the top of your bars or the outsides of your bars, it's up to you what you want to do with it. It's normal, and don't concern yourself with it. Now, what I'd like to do with any excess is to use a candy mold and just press it down in there. These then become the soap samples that I will, though I don't label them because I don't remember what's what, they all start to look the same after a while. I just throw these into packages when people do big orders, like ordering skirts or some of Mr. Rain's handmade wood items. You know, it's just a little extra goodie. And that way people too can find out if they even just like my soap. And then at that point, if they want to order some more, they can. And by the time this video comes out, this soap will be ready to use. So let me know if you're interested in purchasing some. You can send me an email at raincountryhomestead@gmail.com. Or you can follow this video and make it yourself. Alright, so now what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to let your soap sit in your soap molds, whether it be these kind here or this kind here, for 24 hours. And then, by then, they'll be hardened enough to push out of the molds. And you can find how to use this one in a video right up here where I was doing just the plain lard soap. But after 24 hours, you want to push it out. Now, if you're using this mold, you're going to want to then right away after the 24 hours and you remove it from the mold, you're going to want to cut it into bars. Now, for me, when I was doing the lard soap, what some people didn't understand is I was leaving it, after I pressed it out, I left it on the big brick form for 30 days to finish curing, because then what I do is I just shave off what I need from the lard soap. But I've also done it in the smaller bars too with the lard. But typically I like using this for the lard soap and then just kind of shaving off what I need for making my, after it hardens fully, after it fully cures, for making my laundry soap. But again, if you're doing bars, you want to cut it after 24 hours because then it's soft enough to cut. Otherwise it will become too brittle. And then I want to show you here, you can see where you might have noticed I have some, just a little bit in there. All those little soap flakes and the soap flakes I get off of the edges of this, any parts that break off, those also go into my soap, my little container of, I keep of the cut up lard soap. These go in there too for using in making my laundry soap. Now, a couple other things I wanted to talk about is some people who are new to soap making wonder, it's like, well, if lye is so caustic, why do we use it in our soap? Well, first off, you cannot have true soap without lye. All soap is made with lye. And once lye and fat mix together and saponify, it's no longer fat and lye, it is now soap. It's a whole different thing. It's a whole different animal. And at that point, it is then safe to use on your skin or for cleaning. Now, if your soap ends up being too lye heavy, then yes, it can be a bit harsh on the skin. So that is one reason why you want a good balance and a good measurement of your lye to water to fat, so that it's just the right balance. Now, I've had a lot of people very happy with my soap that have bought it and said it's the best soap they've ever used. I don't know about that. I know that I like it. And as long as they're happy with it, that's great too. But it's really a pretty simple process. A lot of people are scared of the lye. I was scared of it for a long time until I finally got over my fear. And once I made that first batch of soap, I was no longer scared and I was hooked from day one. And it's just a matter of making sure that you just, you know, follow your safety procedures. Always make sure you're wearing your safety goggles. And I will link to these below. I bought them in a 3-pack so I could always make sure that there were several on hand to grab. And these are a good idea to have on hand for anything anyway. And again, a well-ventilated room, or you can even do this outside. My first batch I made, I did it outside. And wearing a face mask of some sort, especially if you have to lean over it while you're mixing the lye in with the water. Typically, I just stand way back and I don't breathe in the fumes and then keep it well ventilated. But if you have to be that close or in too close of a space and you don't have ventilation, then you really need to wear some kind of face mask while doing that and while you're running your blender, especially if you're adding ingredients like what I used here, because that was the mistake I made. And some of you might have seen that video a while back. I was making something where I added in some flowers. I was using the stick blender. I hadn't been covering my face. I had my safety goggles on, thank goodness. But what happened was the stick blender, the blades caught onto one of the flowers, the center just right, and it caused the soap to splash into my face and burn my lip. Now, I put a bunch of vinegar on there, and it did help, and it left a mark for only a few hours. By the next day, it was gone. So, but it was a lesson learned. So now I try to be very careful. So I like to use my hoodie. I find that the easiest thing than tying something around my face. I tried that too, but to me, it's just too, I just find it easier to put the hoodie on. Then I can just hold it like this while I'm mixing, and then I can let go, and then I can get air when I'm not mixing. So just a few pointers there, and I do have more soap videos out. My very first video, I'll go ahead and link to that one right up here, and that was before I started doing the whole mask thing, you know, covering my face. But that was just a basic organic herbal soap recipe using herbs from my garden and no essential oils. And I don't use any artificial anything. I don't use artificial oils, scents, or colors in there. I just let whatever, you know, like calendula flowers add a nice color, pansies add a nice color, and plus they're also really good for the skin. And what I find with the herbal soaps, having the herbs in there just gives it a good scrubby quality, and it's just real nice to use on your skin that way. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and that if you're already soap making, it will give you some new ideas of things you can add, like the bentonite clay. And if you haven't started soap making yet, I hope this helps get you over your fear and make you realize it really is quite simple and very, very fun, and it makes wonderful gifts. Thanks for watching. Take care, and God bless.